Hey, how's it going, everybody? Charlie Wilson here, aka Sinister Charlie. Welcome back. Hi. We're gonna watch some Fatty Electron Man, and it's gonna be a lot of fun for everybody. I got a new camera, so that's pretty cool. I don't know if you can tell the difference. I sure can't. Anyway, crossing a frozen river on Christmas. How George Washington saved the American Revolution. The thumbnail was War on Christmas. Those damn liberals. No, I'm just kidding. I don't care. But yeah, Fat Electrician. We're going to like it. Please like his video, like my video. Let's like. And yeah, we'll get into it. I'm not sure if this has to do with crossing of the Delaware or anything. It might. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's go.
Yes, my favorite Christmas story.
Okay. Quack.
Today we're talking about George Washington crossing the Delaware.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
There you
like
go.
the painting. We've all seen the painting. We've all seen the internet memes like America will cross a frozen river on Christmas to kill you in your sleep. Haha, that's funny. What's not funny is the fact that everybody knows the painting, but almost nobody knows the full story.
I don't
It's
either.
a metaphor.
I get it.
But that actually happened, though.
And the reason that's a tragedy is
Okay.
because while the painting is cool, the painting doesn't convey the message that Washington didn't just cross the Delaware River while it was frozen. He crossed it on 3 separate occasions, handed out 3 separate ass whoopings, and saved the entire American Revolution. And it is probably the 10 most important days in American history. And we're going to get to all of it right after word from our...
I've seen the oversimplified video on some of this stuff, but yeah, that was a while ago. I'm sure I know some of the story.
sponsor. This video is brought to you by Supremacy World War III, a free online military strategy game where you can play against other people.
We
you
sit
can pick
the
your
rats,
country
by
and
the
then go
way,
to war
so
with the rest of the world, or they have America
just
only
letting you
mode
know.
where you can pick a state inside the United States and go to war with all of the other
outta here.
states, which is usually what I like to do. I like to play Iowa because I'm from Iowa, and then I like to attack Minnesota for obvious reasons.
Hunter.
No, it's not.
We'd all like to attack Minnesota. All right, you're not the only one, sir.
It's not banter, not now.
But lately I've been playing as America, and my opening attack is obviously against the British because it's December and nothing makes me want to watch the Grinch and cross a frozen river on Christmas to fight British people like the holiday season. But it gets even better because if you use my link down below, you're going to automatically unlock a bunch of freebies, including a special weapon, the railgun. Which, I mean, let's face it, now we're just playing on easy mode. We already beat the British with muskets and cannons, and now we've got railguns. They don't stand a chance. If George Washington would have had one of these bad boys, they probably would have thought twice about putting a tax on tea. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, go check out Supremacy World War III. It's free to play. The link's down below. Let's get back to the video.
Disparity.
Our story begins in December of 1776. George Washington is currently leading the Continental Army, and things are not going well. They have suffered loss after loss after loss at the hands of the British. They've lost New York. They've lost Long Island. They've lost
remember
Fort
that.
Washington. They've lost Fort Lee, and they are now being driven out of New Jersey. All that remains of the Continental Army at this point is about 2,400 men. They are beat up. They are freezing. They are starving.
By the way, I've never seen the movie The Patriot. Just putting that out there. I know that's a mortal sin for an American, but never seen it.
And they've lost almost all of their supplies in their previous losses, and they are now being forced to retreat across the Delaware River into Pennsylvania to desperately try to stop the British from taking Philadelphia. And if that wasn't bad enough, the army is about to not exist because on December 30th at midnight, all of the enlistments for all of the men in the Continental Army expire, and most of them are probably going to go home because they're tired of getting their asses kicked, which means the American Revolution is going to dissolve and it's game over. We remain British forever.
Well, that sounds terrible.
It is terrible.
And the British realize this, so they decide they're not
Sorry, I keep pausing it. I love Archer.
going
Sorry.
to attack Philadelphia. They decide it's the fourth quarter, they're up by 100 points. They're just going to take a knee, let the clock run out, and win the game. There's no reason for them to march south, have one last fight with Washington, and take Philadelphia because the American Revolution is dying just fine on its own. So the top British generals, General Howe and General Cornwallis, order their men to go into winter quarters.
names.
General Cornwallis makes plans to go back home to Britain to spend winter with his wife, and General Howe is going to go up to New England and spend winter with his mistress.
Howe.
Okay, the British, obviously the bad guys in this story, but you got to give it to them. That's a brilliant plan, right? You get to go home, be warm, get a piece of ass, and still win.
I'll make that deal.
What their plan did not account for was that a 6'2" giant by the name of George Washington was about to make the decision that he was going to be the main character of the American Revolution. He was about to have his Rocky moment where he decides nothing's over till it's over. But the clock is ticking. Right now it's about December 8th, and he's got till December 31st at midnight to figure out a way to get all of his men to not abandon their enlistments, to remain in the army, build an army over the course of the next winter, and then take the fight back to the British. And to make things 10 times worse, pretty much everybody has given up on him. Continental Congress is pissed off at his string of losses. All of the other top generals in the Continental Army are secretly going behind his back, telling Congress that they should be his replacement, and they're talking about firing George Washington. They've basically already decided they're going to
That's just the military in general. That's just what happens all the time in the military.
let the British plan work. They're going to let the clock run out. They're going to let the American military dissolve. And then they're going to hope in the spring everybody will have forgotten that they've just had their ass beat for the last 6 months straight. And they'll be able to raise a new army, put somebody else in charge of it, and they're going to go fight the British. But George Washington knows the people aren't going to forget. This revolution is going to die right here, right now, if he can't do something about it. And this is the lowest point of George Washington's life. In his own writings, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically says, I want to quit. I wish I could quit, but I know if I quit, nobody else is going to take up my spot and do what needs to be done right here, right now. He knows that he's the dad. He is a father to a new nation, and quitting is a luxury that he doesn't have. So he gets to work and he comes up with a plan.
Trenton.
George Washington decides that somehow, some way, before December 31st at midnight, he needs to get a win. He needs to get a win so he can capture enemy supplies and
By the way, Trenton probably looked a lot better back then. If you're from New Jersey, I'm sorry.
more importantly, he can get his men and the revolution as a whole some morale. He needs to prove to himself, his men, and the whole world that the British military is not invincible and that they can be beat. And then maybe, just maybe, his men will re-enlist and he can keep the revolution alive. He can turn this from a fourth quarter situation to a halftime situation, and he can come out of this winter with a bigger, better army that's ready to take the fight to the British.
Let's go, Bo,
but in order
next.
to accomplish that, he's going to have to change everything. Up until this point in the war, George Washington has led a very conservative, defensive-minded war. He's going to have to flip that on its head. He is going to have to get aggressive and go out on the offense. He is no longer going to be the general sitting up on the hill overlooking the battlefield issuing orders. He is going to be on the front lines with his men, leading them in combat the entire time, because that's the only way his men are going to follow him. With that in mind, he decides they are going to go to the nearest British outpost. They are going to launch an attack, and they are going to crush them there, steal all the supplies, and get this victory. But that's easier said than done, because the nearest British outpost is a town called Trenton in New Jersey. So they're going to have to recross the Delaware River when it's borderline frozen in winter, when the men are already freezing, starving, and beat up. So the journey alone is a humongous ask, and even if they can make it to Trenton, once they get there, the problem only gets worse because it's occupied by 1,500 Hessians. And the Hessians are German mercenaries hired by the British. They are basically the Blackwater of their...
When I first heard about Hessians, I thought Haitian. And I was like, where are you getting these people from Haiti from? It's like, no. They're all the way across in Germany. It's like, why?
They are the world's premier soldiers for hire. They are in every way professionals and good ones at that. The Continental Army, on the other hand, is a bunch of average Joes that picked up muskets one day. They don't know how to march. They don't know how to fight that great, but they're willing to fight. It is quite literally pros versus Joes, and to make things worse, the Joes are freezing, starving, and low on supplies, and the Hessian pros are not. They are the exact opposite. This is borderline impossible. If they're going to pull this off, they're going to need a Christmas miracle, which is exactly why we're going to attack on Christmas.
Sure.
Just keep it kind of loosey-goosey.
The plan.
All right, so it's decided. We're attacking Trenton on Christmas, so we got to get a plan together. First things first, we got to be able to transport all the men and all the cannons across the river as quickly as possible. And in order to do that, we're going to need as many boats as possible. Luckily, the Delaware River is used for commerce, so there's these things called Durham boats that a lot of farmers and businesses that operate on the river already own. And these boats are capable of carrying a huge quantity of weight because they're usually used for carrying like iron ore or crops. So if we get our hands on those, we'll be able to transport large quantities of of men and cannons across the river as quickly as possible, and they're already along the river. So George Washington orders his guys to go out weeks in advance and track down all the farmers, all the businesses that own these Durham boats, and first they need to ask if they can borrow them. If
And
they're
they
not going to let the
say
Continental
sure.
Army borrow them, they're going to ask them if they can buy them, and if they can't buy them,
Steal 'em.
we're just going to steal
Thank
that
you.
shit. We're going to strategically transfer that shit to our location. Okay, not really that great. It's not good for,
It's
the whole
fine.
hearts and minds, and we want everybody on our side to think we're the good guys thing, but our back is up against the wall. It has to be done. We need these boats. If we can't buy them and we can't borrow them, we're going to fucking steal them. So the men go out, they acquire the boats. Okay, now for the actual plan, how we're going to conduct this battle. We are going to go there. We are going to leave at night. We are going to cross the frozen Delaware River with giant chunks of ice floating down it in these Durham boats in the dark, and then we're going to march 9 miles to Trenton and hopefully get there before the sun is up and we can still attack them at night. And because it's Christmas, hopefully all the Hessians have been partying and drinking and we can catch them when they're drunk, off guard, and just slaughter everybody. That's the plan. Okay, this is not going to be conventional warfare. We're not going to march to Trenton, then form up in ranks on the outskirts of town in a field and wait for the Hessians to come out and form up their ranks and fight like they do, where we all just stand in the field and take shots at each other. No, we are going to rush into the town with our 6-foot-tall Kentucky rifles and start doing...
Nice, dude. That's probably a real gun. I can't imagine. I can't imagine Fatty Electron Man would have a replica of such a gun. That's cool, though. Yeah.
CQB guerrilla warfare tactics. That's the plan. I know what you're thinking. If we're just doing a bunch of close quarters combat inside of an urban environment, why are we bothering to bring a bunch of cannons with us? Surely cannons won't be good for CQB, right? Wrong, because we've got Henry Knox, like Fort Knox where they
Sure.
keep all the gold. Yeah, that guy. He's George Washington's chief
Looking
of
great,
artillery,
Knox.
and he's about to revolutionize how cannons are used in combat. Henry Knox is about to write the playbook for CQB cannon warfare, which shouldn't even be a thing.
They made a CQB AT4, which is pretty sweet.
Wait, hold on, time out. That's
Because usually cannons are just, you put them up on the hill, they shoot at the enemy from far away. That's how they're used. That's what artillery is at this point in time. Henry Knox,
get
however,
rid of
isn't
that.
going to have his
Sorry.
one big artillery battery up on the hill. He's going to take his men that man the cannon, he's going to take them and the cannon, and he's going to attach them to different infantry units, and they are going to roll into town with the infantry, and every time they hit a major crossroads or a choke point, the cannon is going to set up there, and they're going to hold that crossroads and that choke point with the cannon, and they're going to be using canister shot, which is basically a burlap sack full of a bunch of tiny cannonballs, essentially turning it into a giant fucking shotgun, and we all know shotguns are the best for CQB.
Pistols put holes in people. Rifles put holes through people. Shotguns at the right range with the right load will physically remove a chunk of shit off your opponent and throw that shit on the floor.
So Henry Knox and his artillery boys are going to be going
Who the hell is that guy? I'll fight for that guy. That was awesome.
in attached to the main assault element that is led by George Washington himself. There's also going to be 2 other elements of this attack. And the second element is absolutely critical for mission success because there's a Delaware River going down, Trenton is right here, and then there's a little creek that peels off the Delaware River called the Assunpink Creek.
Excuse
Come
me.
again.
And to answer your question, yes, it is taking an enormous amount of self-control not to make a joke about the name of this creek. Anyways, moving on. In order for this mission to succeed, they need to take control of this bridge immediately and cut it off, because if the Hessians are able to get all their men and get them across the bridge, they'll be able to form up, and then there's one giant choke point, and then it's just going to be a slugfest, and the Americans are probably not going to win because they're going to have to run across a bridge to get to the Hessians, or the Hessians are just going to retreat, go to the nearest town, and come back with a ton of reinforcements. And the problem George Washington faces with this is there's not a lot of people capable of leading this force that he also actually trusts, because the
Yeah.
vast majority of high-ranking officers
stab
in the
him in the
Continental
back?
Army at this point in time are politically hostile to George Washington, and they're running off to Congress trying to steal his job. Really, the only big names that are super loyal to George Washington himself are Henry Knox, who has to be with George Washington,
And the next one's going to be Benedict Arnold, isn't it?
and Nathaniel Greene,
No,
the
never
fighting
mind.
Quaker,
Sorry.
aka his right-hand guy, and he also needs him with the main assault force.
The
so
Green
he
Mountain
needs
Boys.
somebody that he can trust that's going to lead these men in combat. So he turns to John Sullivan. Now, John Sullivan and George Washington definitely have their differences. They don't necessarily like each other. They get on each other's nerves. But Sullivan isn't a politicking general. He's not going behind George Washington's back trying to steal his job. His and George Washington's disagreements fall over how to win the battle, not necessarily who should be leading. This guy is is a straight up hardcore soldier that just wants to go in there, get the job done as effectively as possible. Once John Sullivan has his orders, he is a guy that just goes out there and gets it done. He can improvise on the fly, and he is hyper aggressive. He believes that having an imperfect plan that is executed immediately and violently is better than a perfect plan that takes a little while to figure out. And that is why George Washington comes to him with this mission to take over the bridge over the Assunpink and is like, look, I don't care how you do it, just fucking get it done, take this bridge. The third element of this attack wasn't going to be as vital. It was more or less going to be insurance. They were going to cross the Delaware River further south below the Assunpink River on the other side of the bridge from Sullivan. They were
I can't get over that either. I'm sorry.
then going to occupy the road between Trenton and Bordentown, New Jersey, which was the nearest British outpost, which all the reinforcements would be coming from. And if they ended up coming, their job was going to be to stop them, or if they couldn't stop them, at least harass and delay them and give Washington the time he needed to take over Trenton. And because this was not as vital, he would end up giving this job to General Cadwalader, who, while he was loyal to Washington, he also didn't have a great reputation for operating well under pressure. He was too conservative. But he was really the only other loyal guy around that was a general, so Washington basically more or less had to give him the job. So now he's got the leadership that he needs to the best that he could do. Now he's got to improve morale. He's got to get all of his men's hearts into this fight, and he's just brutally honest with them. He straight up just comes out and tells them, look, this is going to be victory or death. We're going to fucking win, or we're all going to die. Those are the only solutions. And that literally becomes the call phrase
Live?
for the mission. Like different units operating in the darkness, you hear somebody off in the distance, you yell out a code word, and they respond back with the right code word. That way you know it's a friendly. The call sign that you yell out is victory, and the person responds with or death. And everybody's surprised. The men are actually fucking pumped because this is the first time in their entire military career that they are going out on the offensive. They get to be the aggressor. Everything up until this point has just been them hunkering down and waiting for the big, bad, invincible British military to come get them and kick their ass. And this is the first time ever that they're gonna roll up and they're gonna do the ass kicking. So this is it. The game is set. It is victory or death. The American Revolution is gonna get a win right here, right now, or it is going to die and we're going to stay British forever.
Boo. No.
Christmas Day, 6 p.m., 1776, all the head honchos are inside of a house. They're all looking at George Washington, Nathaniel Greene, Henry Knox, John Sullivan, General Cadwalader, all looking at him like, are we still going through with this crazy plan? Because not only is this plan crazy, there's now also a snowstorm outside. And George Washington issues the order. The weather doesn't matter. The clock is still ticking. We're going anyways. And you know what? Finding the silver lining, it probably adds to the element of surprise because now it's not just the Hessians thinking, surely the Americans wouldn't cross a frozen river on Christmas to kill us in our sleep. Now it's the Americans surely wouldn't cross a frozen river on Christmas in a snowstorm to kill us in our sleep, right?
Sure we would.
Wrong. No, that's exactly what we're doing. Board the fucking boats. 7 p.m. they
Americans and killing. That's like peanut butter and jelly, which is also American. Well, peanut butter and jelly is what I'm saying.
start ferrying guys across the river, and the weather just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. It's no longer just snow falling. It is sleet and freezing rain. Visibility is incredibly low, and it's getting darker and darker by the minute, and they've got nothing but lamps to light them up while they're crossing a frozen river, getting just pissed on by freezing rain. This slows everything down. It takes hours longer than it was supposed to for Washington and Sullivan's men to get across the river, and they are now hours behind schedule. They don't get all their men across the river until 1 in the morning, and as soon as they get all their men across the river, they receive word that Cadwalader's men weren't able to cross at all, so now it's just the 2 of the 3 elements that they wanted. The men are already freezing. They're gonna have to walk 9 miles through this snowstorm to get to Trenton. They only have 2/3 of the men that they wanted, and 2 men fell off the boats and froze to death already, and the rest of the men are actively freezing to death. And George Washington considers turning back, but he realizes that under these conditions, it's probably gonna take longer to ferry the men back across.
Honestly, I'd rather be in Iraq. I did mostly convoy security when I was in Iraq, and it was mostly night missions. So like a good 90 degrees during the summer at night. I'd rather do that. Thank you.
The river than it is just to march to Trenton, and at least if they're marching, they'll be able to stay warm instead of sitting here waiting for their turn to hop on a boat. So that's it. We've crossed the point of no return. No matter how bad it gets, we have to keep pushing forward. It is quite literally victory or death at this point. They start marching to Trenton, and this march takes way longer than it's supposed to. The men are still pumped spiritually, but physically they are still starving, freezing. It's a snowstorm, it's dark, and all they have is lanterns leading the way. Obviously, Washington and Sullivan's men split up because they're taking different routes to attack different spots on the town, Sullivan winds up sending a runner over to George Washington and is like, hey, our men are completely soaked with this freezing rain. All of our black powder's wet. We're not going to be able to shoot people when we get there. To which Washington replies, then use bayonets. John Sullivan, king of just getting the job done anyways, is like, okay, Roger, take over the bridge with nothing but pointy sticks. You got it. They don't make it to Trenton until like 7:30 in the morning. The sun's already coming up. Everything is going wrong. They're missing one of their three elements. The black powder's wet. The sun is now up when they were supposed to attack at the dark. And the Hessians didn't go and get drunk the night before, and they're all just sleeping. The perfect plan that we had has crumbled. It no longer exists. The only thing we have now is immediate and violent execution of whatever we've got.
Yeah, let's try some schoolyard bullshit.
So the Americans just attack at 8 o'clock in the morning. There's very few guards out because, again, it's the day after Christmas and a snowstorm just ended. Surely the Americans aren't on their way, right? Wrong. All the guards get killed immediately.
Okay.
Henry Knox and his boys roll in there with cannons, set them up on the street. Everybody in town's been alerted from taking out the guards. Hessians start running out of the buildings in their pajamas with their guns, trying to figure out what's going on. They're getting lit up by canister shot from Henry Knox's artillery. So it's already chaos for the Hessians, and then the American infantry starts...
Those were some sweet Hessian hats, though, I gotta say. Very impractical, but still... nice pointy hats.
Doing what the American infantry does, and they start deliberately targeting the officers so they can't give any of the men any orders. So it's just mass chaos for the Hessians absolutely everywhere. And then to make things even worse for the Hessians, some of the American civilians inside the town of Trenton start helping in the battle. One soldier had an account that he witnessed a woman from a second-story window shoot and kill a Hessian captain.
Awesome.
Which is just poetry, because American men don't engage in gentlemanly warfare, and American women definitely don't. Some of the Hessian troops wind up retreating across the bridge before Sullivan could take it, but ultimately he does wind up taking control of this bridge at about 8:30. So we are 30 minutes into this battle. America's already taken the bridge. They're kicking ass, and Colonel Rahl, the Hessian commander, is just now getting out of his quarters. They went and woke him up the second the attack started, but, you know, he had to go and get his uniform on and get his powdered wig because he's got to go win in style. So he comes out, and it's just complete chaos. Men are scattered everywhere. All of his officers are fucking dead. He hops on his horse and starts rallying his men to this apple orchard right outside of town. So Colonel Rahl's out there on horseback yelling orders. He's getting all of his men to this apple orchard, gets most of them there, starts getting them formed up, and then some random American, some fucking farm kid with a Kentucky rifle notices, oh look, a guy on horseback with a bunch of fancy shit on his outfit and a powdered wig.
Shoot that guy.
There you go.
So now Colonel Rahl, fatally wounded, basically orders his men to carry him back to his quarters and tells the rest of his officers, like, good luck, fucking figure it out. And by the time that unfolds, Sullivan already has cannons on the other side of the Assunpink River pointed at them on the apple orchard. Henry Knox has all the cannons moved around them on the other side, and it's just all the Hessians standing in the middle, surrounded by cannons and Americans, and they're forced to surrender. When it was all said and done, 22 Hessians had been killed, 83 had been wounded, and they captured 900. The rest of them managed to escape across the bridge before Sullivan took it over. And the Americans, the untrained, undisciplined, inferior fighting force, managed to suffer, let me check my notes, fucking zero casualties. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, the Hessians' MVP player was the frozen Delaware River. It's the only thing that took out any Americans in this entire operation. And to most people, that's it. That's the story of the famous painting.
Damn you, Delaware.
Of Washington standing up on a boat crossing the frozen Delaware River on Christmas to kill his enemies. There's literally an entire 90-minute movie about this entire battle. It's like my favorite Christmas movie ever. It's called The Crossing, and this is where they end the story. But in reality, this is where the story begins. So while most people end the story there and they're like, oh, America had their first victory at Trenton, hooray, the revolution is saved. No, that's not how reality works, okay? A bunch of Hessians escaped across the bridge and they're gonna go tell the British, and now Cornwallis and General Howe aren't gonna be able to go home and get laid. They're gonna be super pissed off. They're gonna come back with a ton of men and crush George Washington. So while everybody else is celebrating because America just got their first victory, George Washington is like, grab the supplies, pack your shit up. We're heading back across the Delaware right now. And that's exactly what happens. The men are dog-ass tired. They've been up all night. night. They just want a battle, but hey, George Washington says so. That's what we're going to do. They get all the supplies that they just captured. They pack all their shit up. They head back across the Delaware.
Back,
at least
boys.
now there's not a snowstorm going on. So they get back. Now Washington has to handle the fact that the clock is still ticking. Like the enlistments still expire on December 31st at midnight, and now it's December 27th. And now Cornwallis, who's pissed off that he didn't get to go home for Britain for the winter and bang his wife, is marching towards them with 8,000 redcoats. And he's got like approximately 2,000-ish guys, and they all get to go home in 3 days. So if Cornwallis shows up and his army just dissolves overnight, he's not going to stand there with 8,000 guys and be like, oh, I guess we can all go home now. No, he's going to continue marching down to Philadelphia and squash the entire rebellion. If Washington can't figure out how to put up a defense right here, right now, it's still game over. So Washington forms up his men and delivers a speech, and he basically lays it out how it is. He's like, look, you guys can go home if you want. I can't stop you. But if you guys stay, give me one more month. I will get all of you a $10 bonus from Continental Congress. I will get you paid.
Right.
And if you give me one more month, we can fight and keep this rebellion alive. Otherwise, we're never going to have another shot like this. They're going to absolutely crush us if you guys quit right.
Look, I was going to re-enlist for like $2,000 a few years ago, and yeah, I probably wouldn't. Never mind.
now. So they stay. They're
I
freezing.
don't
They're
know.
starving. They're beat up. They're exhausted. But they stay. And as news spreads that America just actually beat the invincible British military at Trenton, he starts getting some more reinforcements. Some more militias join under Washington. He gets some new recruits, and his troops go from 2,000 to approximately 4,000 men. It is now 4,000 untrained American colonials versus 8,000 redcoats under Cornwallis. The odds are getting better, but they're not looking that great. This is looking like America's gonna get its ass kicked again. This is quite literally, yet again, victory or death. They gotta figure out how to stop Cornwallis. And yet again, George Washington's back is up against the wall. He cannot decide whether or not he wants to take this fight. He has to take this fight. The only thing he can decide is where and how. So he decides they're going to go back to Trenton, and they're going to
William Howe?
set up all their defenses on the bridge
I'm an
and
idiot.
force the British army to cross that narrow choke point while the American army is firing at them. Okay, strategically, this is brilliant. Funnel your enemies into a narrow choke point, light them up with cannon fire. Okay, that's fantastic. Metaphorically, also brilliant, because if you're gonna make your last stand, fight and die, there's no better place to do it than the ass in pink. Am I right?
Yeah.
I tried so hard
Yeah.
not to make that joke. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So that's it. That's the plan. Washington
forgive
and his
you.
men recross the Delaware for a third time. They start digging trenches. They're getting the cannons set up. They are getting ready to make their last stand. And George Washington goes over to John Sullivan and is like, John, I need you to take your best guys. I need you to go up the road where Cornwallis is coming from. And I need you to just harass the shit out of him and slow him down as long as possible.
Aye, aye,
okay, on one
boss.
hand, like why? Why does that matter? Why are we trying to slow him down? We're making our last stand. Like we might as well do it during the daylight. I don't want to fight at night. But also, this is John Sullivan, the guy that just takes orders and accomplishes a fucking mission. So he takes his men and he goes and he does just that. So Cornwallis is trying to march 8,000 redcoats down the road, and John Sullivan and his guys are just in the tree line taking pop shots at him the entire time. They launch an ambush. They dip. The British have to like turn, file ranks, go out into the field. They fire back into the trees. Turns into a whole 45-minute thing every time. And by the time they return fire, John Sullivan and his guys are already gone. They harass and delay him forever. Nobody really knows why we're trying to delay him, but you know, fuck it. George Washington said so, and he probably has a plan. So that's what we're doing.
Red Bridge.
So Cornwallis and his men make it to the Ass and Pink Bridge late afternoon on January 2nd.
You can tell he wants to laugh every time he says it.
The Americans are there, they're ready. Cornwallis just launches full-on frontal attack against the bridge, and America mows them down. They retreat, he launches another full frontal attack. American cannon fire and musket fire mows them down again. They retreat. Cornwallis does a third attack. They get mowed down again. He lost somewhere between 150 and 365 men. Accounts from that day said the bridge looked like it was painted red with British blood. At
Red
this point,
Bridge.
it's getting dark. The battle for the day is over. Both sides start getting their camp ready. They're going to camp down for the night. Get ready. They're going to duke this out in the morning. That's what they're thinking. George Washington, on the other hand, has other plans in mind. And this is why he sent John Sullivan out to delay Cornwallis, because he wanted this battle to get broken up by nightfall so that he could pull off a pro-gamer move. Washington takes a couple of hundred guys and orders them to just spend the entire night building bonfires and making as much noise as humanly possible. Be loud, have conversations, yell, build a bunch of
Okay.
fires, make it seem like there's 4,000
Oh,
motherfuckers on this side of the bridge. And the rest of us are all going to take these tiny trails. We're going to go around Cornwallis to the town of Princeton, where he just came from. We're going to fuck up all his reinforcements and steal their supplies.
Jarhead, underrated movie. It's boring, but then again, so is war most of the time. So
okay, that's the American plan. Cut back
Especially
over to the
these
other
days.
side of the bridge. Cornwallis is having a meeting with all of his officers, and they're trying to figure out what to do because they still might want to attack at night. And Cornwallis and pretty much all the other officers are on the same page of like, no, we're gonna attack in the morning. He's not gonna go nowhere. He's trapped. He can't go anywhere. We'll attack him in the morning. But there's one guy in that
Hey,
Sir
nice
Erskine.
haircut.
He's an officer, and he's like, no, we need to attack Washington right now. Have you guys not been paying attention? This is Washington's entire MO. He's done this like 15 fucking times, okay? We had him cornered at Rhode Island, and we're like, we're gonna crush him in the morning, and then somehow he evacuated 9,000 men overnight and disappeared like a fart in the wind, okay? Then he did the same thing at Fort Lee, and then he attacked Trenton out of nowhere. He's a slippery motherfucker. We need to go get him right now.
I have a gun in my room. You give me 5 seconds, I'll get it. Boom! I'll blow their brains out. Scott?
you just don't get it, do you?
But then Sir Erskine kind of looks like an asshole because when they look across the river, there's just more and more fireplaces popping up all over the place. And that's when Cornwallis says, we'll go over and bag him in the morning. Washington and his men start marching 12 miles around them to head up to Princeton. Yes, like the college.
Yeah,
this
I
is
know.
where the college
I'm
is. They're
aware.
going to attack Princeton University. They march all
I
night
know.
long. When the sun's coming up, they're approaching Princeton. Cut back over to the British. Cornwallis and his boys wake up. They go over
That's where Uncle Phil went to school in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
there, and it's just a bunch of dead fire pits everywhere. There's not an American in sight.
I fucking knew it! Oh!
Cutting back over to the Americans, as they're approaching Princeton, there's 2 roads going in and out, right? And the Americans are on one road, and there's 1,200 British reinforcements on the other road, and they're literally passing each other as America's entering Princeton, and they just kind of turn and look, and the fight breaks out right there. From here, it just turns into a giant shit show, right? They were marching on a road. They're not in battle formations. You've got John Sullivan and his men, and then Cadwalader and his men leading the way
Sure.
up front, and then George Washington's behind him. So John Sullivan and Cadwalader's men are the ones that engage first, and after a little while, the British start getting the better of Cadwalader's men, and they're breaking apart the 2 formations that John Sullivan and Cadwalader had set up, and they're about to split them in 2, break the line, and crush the American forces. At this point, George Washington, leading from the front, rides in on his horse into the break in the American line and starts waving his men into battle to charge. And right as he gets out in the open and everybody sees, holy shit, that's George Washington, the British open up with a volley and just cover the entire battlefield in smoke. And George Washington disappears from eye view, and everybody just has the sinking in their stomach feeling of like, fuck, George Washington just died. That's it. But as
Yeah.
the smoke dissipates, George Washington comes back into eye view, still on his horse, still waving his men into battle, and they follow and proceed to crush the British line.
How could you miss? It was 3 feet in front of you!
With the British line fractured, some of the Redcoats turn, take off towards Trenton so they can reconvene with Cornwallis, and the rest of them are forced to retreat into Princeton University and take up occupation inside of some of the school buildings, and they barricade themselves inside. So the Americans roll in the cannons and just start lighting up Princeton University with cannon fire. Eventually, the British are forced to wave the white flag out of these school building windows, and they are forced to surrender. And from here, George Washington has yet another decision to make because he knows that he is now in between Cornwallis and the Redcoats and their supply depot in New Brunswick, which is the biggest supply depot for the British Empire in this entire area. If he goes into New Brunswick and takes out that supply depot, it would be humongous. But also, that's exactly what Cornwallis is anticipating, and Cornwallis is for sure beelining it there as fast as he can because he does not want to lose this supply depot. Instead, Washington decides it's finally time to take up winter quarters, and he's going to be a dick
All right.
about it the entire time.
Father.
He marches his men further into New Jersey, into a place called Morristown up in the hills,
Oh, I know
which
where
is
that is.
heavily populated by people supporting the Patriot cause. It's also up in the hills. There's high ground all over the place. There's very few roads to get in and out. It is extremely easy for him to defend, and the British aren't going to be able to reach him there without taking a humongous amount of losses. More importantly, it's centralized in relation to all the other British outposts, so he has this impenetrable home base that's centralized. So from here, for the next 2 to 3 weeks, He just sends out raiding parties on all the British outposts and is relentlessly harassing them until they finally say fuck this and the British pull out of New Jersey altogether for the winter. And when this news spread, thousands upon thousands of young men went and enlisted in the Continental Army. They got a ton of support from civilians. They got more food, more supplies, more everything. The entire revolution was a dying fire down to its last little red ember, and in its last moments, George Washington walked up with a fucking gallon of gasoline and poured it on top and turned it into a massive bonfire. The Battle of Trenton, Assunpink Creek, and Princeton all happened in the span of 10 days, and in that 10 days, George Washington proved to the entire world that the British military was not only not invincible, but that they could be beat. It is probably the only reason that you're not drinking tea from a kettle right now, and it is probably...
Hey, don't tell me what I'm drinking out of, you son of a bitch.
...the most important 10 days in American history. So yeah, that is the full and real story of the famous painting of Washington crossing the Delaware on Christmas. He didn't just cross it once, he crossed it 3 times. He handed out 3 separate ass whoopings, saved the American Revolution, and changed the world forever. And that is why he is the father of the United States of America. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch, maybe order some Echelon. All that's available at thefatelectrician.com.
I got my ghost.
Quack bang. Out.
George Washington weighed a ton, had a lot of fun.
And you guys thought Die Hard was a good Christmas story.
Yeah, I didn't, but, you know, I just thought it was a good action movie. I mean, Bruce Willis at his greatest, and I'm kind of waiting and seeing if there's going to be some kind of video that pops up, and I'm really just...
Don't forget to go check out Supremacy World War III, unlock your railgun.
Okay, I'm not getting the railgun. Yeah, there you go. That was a fun story. I knew, like, a lot of that, like the Green Mountain Boys and stuff like that. But I didn't know a whole lot else. Anyway, fun story. Please like and subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate that. And go subscribe to The Fat Electrician. I know he needs my help. And yeah, if you got any recommendations, put them down in the comments. I will get to them eventually. Yeah, like, comment, share. What's that thing you can do on mobile now? It's like it's a special thing, and you hit it, and it goes, wee. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and bye.